The grand terrace of our villa offered a breathtaking view of the sparkling Amalfi Coast, bathed in the soft glow of the setting sun. It was the perfect backdrop for the lavish party my wife Isabella had organized to celebrate her promotion in Milan's competitive luxury real estate market. Our guests, a mix of colleagues, friends, and clients, sipped champagne and exchanged pleasantries beneath twinkling fairy lights. I was in the kitchen, refilling a tray of hors d'oeuvres, when I heard it. "It's not fair, Isabella," a woman's voice said, carrying through the open patio door. "You have two lovers with big tools, and I have none. How do you manage them both?" The words hit me like a brick wall. My hand froze mid-reach for the tray, my face drained of color. For a moment, I thought I had misheard, but then Isabella's low, conspiratorial laugh followed, drifting through the air. "It's not easy," she said, her tone playful. "But trust me, it's worth it." My mind went into overdrive, a whirlwind of confusion, anger, and disbelief. Two lovers? I leaned closer to the door, careful not to make a sound, as her friend continued, oblivious to the storm she had just unleashed inside me. "If I were you," the woman said, "I'd drop that boring husband of yours and focus on the fun ones." Isabella's response was muffled by laughter, but it didn't matter. The damage was done. The rest of the party was a blur. I smiled, nodded, and played the role of the doting husband while my mind churned with questions. Who were these men? How long had this been going on? How had I been so blind? Isabella had always had a magnetic charm. She had a way of lighting up a room, drawing people to her effortlessly. But now, that same charisma felt like a weapon, a tool she used to manipulate and deceive me. That night, I didn't confront her. Instead, I began piecing together the puzzle over the next week, quietly observing her and noting the details I had previously overlooked. The late-night calls she dismissed as work emergencies, the extra care she took in her appearance before certain client meetings, and the way her phone never left her side. I also delved into her social media, searching for clues. It didn't take long to find them: subtle comments, seemingly innocent photos tagged at the same locations by two different men, and the way her smile brightened just a little more when mentioning her business partner Julio or her personal trainer Marco. The betrayal burned, but I refused to let it consume me. Instead, I channeled my anger into planning. If Isabella thought she could play me for a fool, she was about to learn otherwise. My first move was to contact Julio, the so-called business partner. Posing as a potential client, I arranged a meeting at a high-end cafe in the city. Julio arrived exuding confidence in his tailored suit. Over coffee, I subtly steered the conversation toward Isabella. "She's quite the charmer, isn't she?" I asked casually. Julio's smirk told me everything I needed to know. "She's persuasive," he replied, his tone thick with innuendo. Next, I turned my attention to Marco, the personal trainer. It wasn't difficult to track him down. A quick online search led me to his fitness studio. I signed up for a session, introducing myself as Isabella's husband. Marco's reaction was less composed than Julio's. His eyes widened, and he stumbled over his words. The guilt was written all over his face. With both men now in my sights, I began orchestrating their downfall. The culmination of my plan would take place at Isabella's next big event, a cocktail party for her colleagues and clients at an exclusive rooftop bar. I made sure both Julio and Marco would be there, each believing they had been invited by Isabella for a private rendezvous. Neither knew the other would be present. The evening began as expected, with Isabella basking in the attention of her guests. But as the night progressed, the tension grew. Julio arrived first, scanning the room until his eyes landed on Isabella. He approached her with a knowing smile, only for Marco to walk in moments later. The realization hit them simultaneously. Their smiles faltered, replaced by confusion, and then anger. Isabella's expression was priceless, a mixture of shock, panic, and desperation as the two men confronted her. "Julio," Marco said, his voice low but furious. "What are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same," Julio shot back, his jaw tightening. "Isabella, care to explain?" Isabella stammered, her carefully constructed facade crumbling under the weight of their accusations. The surrounding guests watched in stunned silence as the confrontation escalated. It was my cue. I stepped forward, holding up a folder containing photos, text messages, and receipts, everything I had gathered over the past few weeks. "If you're looking for answers," I said, my voice calm and unwavering, "you'll find them here." I dropped the folder onto the bar, the contents spilling out for all to see. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the evidence unfolded, revealing Isabella's double life. Her carefully constructed persona shattered as the truth came to light. The confrontation at the rooftop bar reached its peak, and her once confident demeanor collapsed into stammered denials and frantic pleas. Murmurs grew louder among the guests, curiosity quickly morphing into judgment as they pieced together the story. Julio and Marco, two men she had led to believe they were the only ones, turned their anger on each other. "You told me I was the only one," Julio growled, his voice echoing across the terrace. "Are you serious right now?" Marco snapped back, fists clenched. "She's been lying to both of us, and you're mad at me?" Their argument drew more attention, and soon, all eyes were on Isabella. She stood frozen between them, her eyes darting back and forth, her face pale. "Please," she whispered, voice trembling. "Let's not do this here." But it was too late. I stepped forward, folder in hand, and placed it on the bar. "If you're looking for answers," I said, my voice firm and clear, "here they are." As Julio and Marco rifled through the photos, messages, and receipts, their anger turned to disbelief. "You brought him here?" Julio growled, pointing at Marco. "Are you out of your mind?" "Don't act like you're any better," Marco shot back. "You're just as pathetic as she is." The tension in the air grew thick as the guests, once captivated by the Amalfi Coast view, now focused on the drama unfolding before them. Isabella, her face streaked with tears, turned to me. "Alex," she choked out, "please let me explain." I stared at her, my expression unreadable. "Explain what, Isabella? That you've been lying to me? That you've turned our marriage into a joke?" My voice rose, cutting through the whispers. "There's nothing left to explain." With that, I walked away, leaving her to face the wreckage she had caused. As I exited, I heard Marco's parting words, sharp and bitter. "You're not worth this." The fallout was swift and brutal. Isabella's carefully curated image, successful real estate professional, doting wife, life of the party, was reduced to ashes. News of her double life spread like wildfire, fueled by the photos and messages Julio and Marco couldn't resist sharing with their own circles. Within days, her firm, once known for its pristine reputation, wasted no time distancing itself from her. "It's best if you step down quietly," her boss said, barely hiding his disdain. Humiliated, Isabella resigned. Her career was in ruins. Her social life fared no better. Invitations vanished, friends ghosted her, and even her closest confidants turned their backs. They didn't want to be associated with the scandal that now defined her. As for me, I wasted no time. I filed for divorce, changed the locks on the villa, and had her belongings packed and sent to her parents' house. She didn't contest anything, too defeated to fight back. The last time I saw her was in the lawyer's office. Her once bright eyes were hollow and tired. Julio and Marco, despite their initial anger at each other, both reached out to apologize. "I didn't know," Julio said over the phone, his tone heavy with regret. Marco echoed the sentiment in a brief email, but I had no interest in their guilt or excuses. They had been complicit in the betrayal, and I wanted nothing to do with either of them. Months later, when I thought the chapter had closed, I received a letter in the mail. The envelope was plain, but the handwriting unmistakably Isabella's. I hesitated before opening it, unsure if I even wanted to know what she had to say. Inside was a handwritten note, the words carefully chosen, filled with regret. "I made a terrible mistake," she wrote. "I was selfish, careless, and I hurt you in ways I can never undo. I still love you, Alex, and I hope someday you can find it in your heart to forgive me." I stared at the letter for a long time. The emotions it stirred surprised me. Not because I felt anything for her, I didn't, but because it reminded me how far I had come since that night. I folded the letter and placed it in the drawer of my desk, not out of sentimentality, but as a reminder of the life I had left behind. Later that week, I learned from a mutual acquaintance that Julio and Marco had both moved on, each finding new relationships. Isabella, however, had not. She had become a shadow of her former self, struggling to rebuild her life in the wake of her choices. As I stood on the balcony of my new apartment in Florence, the warm glow of the setting sun casting long shadows across the city, I felt a profound sense of peace. Betrayal had nearly broken me, but it had also set me free. It had shown me the truth about Isabella, about the life I thought we shared, and about myself. I realized then that revenge wasn't about ruining someone else. It was about reclaiming your own story, finding the strength to move forward and rebuild. Isabella had chosen lies, and in doing so, she had lost everything. But I had chosen truth, and it had set me free. Revenge isn't about destruction, I thought with a quiet smile. It's about finding freedom and letting the past crumble behind you.